Subscribe to Infidelity Tales Lab. Now, let's begin. Vincent Kern had survived 3 tours in Afghanistan, countless firefights, and 18 months of the most brutal desert warfare the Corps could throw at him. He'd earned his stripes as a Marine Staff Sergeant through blood, sweat, and an ironclad sense of duty. But nothing in those years of combat had prepared him for the 15-hour flight from Kandahar to Atlanta, cramped in a military transport with his gear and a Christmas present for his 5-year-old daughter, Emma, tucked carefully in his rucksack. He'd requested emergency leave 2 weeks early, citing family reasons that his CO didn't question. The truth was simpler. Vincent missed his little girl with an ache that no amount of video calls could cure. Emma had his eyes sharp gray, observant, and her mother's blonde hair. She was bright, curious, always asking why the sky was blue or how airplanes stayed up. Vincent had promised her he'd be home for Christmas, and he intended to keep that promise. The house in suburban Augusta looked the same as he'd left it 14 months ago. White siding, black shutters, a swing set in the backyard that he'd built himself before his last deployment. His truck was still in the driveway where he'd left it with his brother-in-law, Todd Harden, who'd been keeping it maintained. Vincent had texted Brittany from the airport, saying he'd be late, wanting to surprise them. It was 4 in the afternoon on December 23rd, and the neighborhood was quiet. Most people at work or last-minute shopping. He grabbed his duffel, and the wrapped present a stuffed unicorn Emma had been begging for, and headed for the front door. His keys still worked. The house was warm. The Christmas tree lit up in the living room, presents already stacked beneath it. Everything seemed normal until he heard it. A child's scream. Emma's scream. Vincent's training kicked in before conscious thought. He dropped the duffel, hand instinctively going to where his sidearm would be, except he wasn't armed, not here, not home. The scream came again, muffled, from the back of the house. The basement. He moved fast, boots silent on the carpet, adrenaline sharpening every sense. The basement door was open. Voices drifted up, Brittany's laugh, high and cruel. A woman's voice, older, saying, "Hold her still, she needs to learn." More laughter. Vincent descended the stairs 3 at a time. The scene that greeted him would haunt him forever. Emma was on the floor, pinned down by 9 adults. 9 members of Brittany's family, people he'd had Thanksgiving dinners with, people he'd trusted with his daughter. Marcia Cole, Brittany's mother, knelt over Emma with a pair of kitchen scissors, blood on the blades. Emma's mouth was forced open, her tongue extended, already cut and bleeding. The little girl's eyes were wide with terror and pain, tears streaming down her face. Brittany stood against the wall, phone up, filming. She was laughing. "That's what you get for talking back to Grandma," Marcia said, adjusting her grip on the scissors. "Now hold still. We're not done. Get the fuck away from my daughter." Vincent's roar cut through the basement like a thunderclap. 9 heads snapped toward him. For a frozen moment, nobody moved. Then Marcia's face twisted. "Vincent? You're not supposed to be." He crossed the basement in 4 strides, grabbed Marcia by her collar, and threw her backward into the wall with enough force to crack the drywall. The scissors clattered to the floor. The other family members scrambled back, releasing Emma, who immediately curled into a ball, sobbing and choking on her own blood. Vincent scooped his daughter up with one arm, shielding her against his chest. With his free hand, he pointed at each person in the room, his voice dropping to a lethal calm that made several of them flinch. "Nobody moves. Nobody says a fucking word." Brittany stepped forward, phone still recording, her expression more annoyed than afraid. "Vincent, you don't understand. Shut up." He'd never spoken to her like that before. Never needed to. But right now, looking at her, at all of them, he didn't recognize these people, didn't recognize his wife. "Emma, baby, hold on. Daddy's got you." Emma's small hands clutched at his tactical jacket, still dusty from Afghanistan. She couldn't speak, could only make horrible wet sounds as blood filled her mouth. Vincent carried her up the stairs, away from those monsters, grabbing his phone from his pocket with his free hand. "Vincent, wait." That was Todd Harden, Brittany's younger brother, following him up. "Let's just talk about this." Vincent spun, and whatever Todd saw in his eyes made the man stop cold on the stairs. "You held down my daughter while your mother cut her tongue out. I will deal with you. But first, I'm getting Emma to a hospital." He was halfway to the front door when his training overrode his panic. Stop. Think. These people had just committed felony child abuse. If he left them unsupervised, they'd destroy evidence, coordinate stories, maybe even run. And Brittany had it all on video, but would she delete it? Vincent's mind raced through scenarios with the cold precision that had kept him alive in combat. The local police would take hours to respond properly. These people had money. Marcia's late husband had left her well off, and the Cole family had connections in Augusta. Lawyers would be called before the patrol cars even arrived. Emma needed medical attention immediately. But Vincent needed to secure this situation first. It would take 3 minutes. 3 minutes to ensure these bastards couldn't escape justice. He carried Emma to his truck, buckled her into the passenger seat, with his jacket wrapped around her for warmth and comfort, and locked the door. Emma, baby, look at me. Her terrified eyes met his. I'm right here. Count to 100, like we practiced. Daddy will be right back. He grabbed his gear bag from where he dropped it. Inside was everything he'd been issued for his deployment. Tactical equipment, zip ties, a handheld radio, and his service weapon, which he wasn't supposed to bring home but had packed anyway, along with his phone's external battery and tactical headlamp. Vincent moved back into the house. The family had clustered in the living room, voices rising in argument. He counted 9. Marcia Cole, Brittany, Todd Harden, Brittany's sister Renee Knox, and her husband Barry Knox, 2 of Marcia's sisters Laurie Emery and Gloria Holman, and Gloria's adult sons Randy and Lon Holman. All of them had been in that basement. Everyone outside, Vincent said quietly. Now, Marcia drew herself up, trying to regain authority. Now you listen here. Vincent pulled out his service pistol. He didn't aim it at anyone, just held it at his side. But the message was clear. Outside, back patio. Now, they went. The back patio was enclosed, a sunroom addition with large windows and only one door leading back inside. Vincent herded them all in, then stepped out and locked the door from the outside. The lock was a simple deadbolt, key operated from both sides. Vincent had both keys. Then, he went to work. He moved through the house methodically, locking every door and window from the outside where possible, using zip ties to secure what couldn't be locked. The front door, the side door, from the garage, the basement windows. The family had started pounding on the sunroom door, shouting, but Vincent ignored them. This was a tactical situation now, and he was in control. 9 minutes after discovering the abuse, Vincent had secured the scene. The family was contained in the sunroom with no way out. The house was locked down. Emma was safe in his truck, and now he could think. He sat on the front steps, hands shaking with adrenaline and rage, and called 911. Then, he called his JAG lawyer from base. Then he called his brother, Daryl Kern, who lived 2 hours away in Columbia. Finally, he went to Emma, scooped her out of the truck, and held her as she sobbed into his chest, her mouth still bleeding, waiting for the ambulance he could already hear approaching. Behind him, through the windows, he could see 9 people screaming and pounding on the glass. Brittany had her phone out, probably calling her lawyer. Marcia was red-faced with fury. The others looked scared now, finally understanding they'd crossed a line. Vincent didn't look at them. He looked at his daughter, at her pain, at her fear, and made a promise that not even God himself could make him break. They would all pay for what they'd done, every single one of them. The law would have its turn first. But if the law failed Emma, if lawyers and money and connections let these monsters walk free, then Vincent Kern would show them exactly what a decorated Marine with nothing left to lose could do. The ambulance pulled up, and Vincent carried his daughter toward it, never once looking back at the house. But in his mind, he was already planning, already calculating, already preparing for war. This time, the enemy was family, and Vincent fought to win. The emergency room at Augusta University Medical Center moved with controlled chaos. Vincent sat beside Emma's bed in the pediatric unit, watching nurses and doctors work while a victim advocate spoke quietly in the corner with 2 police officers. Emma had been sedated after they'd stabilized her tongue. The cuts weren't as deep as Vincent had feared, missing major blood vessels. But the trauma was severe. Partial laceration of the anterior tongue. The doctor, a stern woman named Dr. Janet Gill, had explained. She'll need microsurgery to repair the damage. We're bringing in a specialist. She'll likely have scarring and some speech impediment, but with therapy." She trailed off, shaking her head. 23 years in pediatrics. Never seen anything like this. Now, Vincent waited, Emma sleeping fitfully beside him, while the hospital's mandatory reporting protocols kicked in. A detective named Ken Beck arrived around 8 p.m., a grizzled veteran with sharp eyes who'd clearly seen his share of ugliness. "Staff Sergeant Kern?" Beck pulled up a chair. "I need your statement." Vincent told him everything. The detective's expression grew harder with each detail. When Vincent mentioned the 9 adults holding Emma down, Beck's jaw actually clenched. "And you secured the suspects on scene?" "I contained them in the sunroom. Locked them in. Called 911, came straight here with my daughter." Beck almost smiled. "Well, that's a first. How long were they locked in?" "About 40 minutes before the patrol units arrived, according to my brother. He got to the house around the same time as the first responders." "Your brother Daryl?" Beck consulted his notes. He gave a preliminary statement. Says, when he arrived, the suspects were still contained, and he assisted the responding officers in processing the scene. Beck leaned back. "I'll be honest with you, Sergeant. In my 30 years, I've never had a child abuse case handed to me this clean. The suspects contained multiple witnesses, physical evidence, and," he paused. "Your wife was recording it?" "On her phone. I didn't see her delete it before I secured her with the others. We recovered the phone. She tried to delete the video, but our tech guys can pull it back." Beck studied Vincent. "That video is going to make this case. 9 adults participating in or observing the torture of a 5-year-old. That's aggravated child abuse for all of them. Maybe attempted mayhem charges. Georgia law doesn't look kindly on this." Vincent said nothing. His hand rested on Emma's small arm, careful of the IV line. Beck continued, "All 9 are in custody. We arrested them on scene. They're being processed now. The DA will have to decide on charges, but I can tell you this is going to be big. Media's already sniffing around." "I don't care about media." "You will." Beck's voice was sympathetic. "Your wife's family has money. They're already lawyering up. Marcia Cole hired Winston Marsh within an hour of arrest. That's the best defense attorney in 3 counties. Vincent met the detective's eyes. "I don't care how good their lawyers are. I want them in prison." "So do I, son. But I need you to understand these cases are complicated. Defense will argue it was discipline that got out of hand, that your mother-in-law has a history of strict parenting, that cultural differences. She cut my daughter's tongue with scissors. I know, and we have it on video. But juries." Beck sighed. "Look, I'm on your side. I want to see every one of these people behind bars. But you need to prepare yourself for a fight. A long one." After Beck left, Vincent sat in the quiet hospital room and thought about what the detective had said. A long fight. Lawyers. Juries. Maybe some of them would walk. Maybe all of them would walk, depending on how good those lawyers were and how they played the system. He thought about his Marine training. In combat, you had rules of engagement, but you also had mission objectives. The mission was always clear. Neutralize the enemy. Protect your unit. Complete the objective. No matter what it took. His mission now was just as clear. Protect Emma and make sure the people who hurt her face consequences. Real consequences, not whatever watered-down justice the system might offer. The door opened, and Daryl walked in. Vincent's younger brother was a high school teacher in Columbia, built leaner than Vincent, but with the same gray eyes and the same stubborn jaw their father had passed down. Daryl took one look at Emma's bandaged mouth and had to turn away for a moment. "Christ, Vince, thanks for coming. Are you kidding?" "When you called," Daryl pulled up a chair. "I've been at the house with the police. They processed everything. Took the scissors, photographed the basement, took statements from the neighbors." "Vince, this is going to blow up," Beck said. "It's already on the news. Local stations are calling it holiday horror and talking about family torture." Daryl ran his hand through his hair. "Brittany's family is circling the wagons. I overheard one of the lawyers on the phone. They're planning to argue that Emma was being disciplined for increasingly violent behavior, that she'd been hurting other kids at daycare, and this was a last resort." Vincent's voice dropped to something dangerous. "Emma has never hurt anyone in her life. I know that. You know that. But they're building a narrative." Daryl leaned forward. "Vince, I need you to listen to me. Whatever you're thinking, don't. Let the system work. The system. Vincent looked at his brother. You really think the system is going to deliver justice here? I think the system is the only way you don't end up in prison yourself. You're a Marine, you know about the chain of command, about following protocol. Protocol. Vincent's laugh was bitter. I followed protocol my whole life, Daryl. I followed orders, did my duty, left my family for months at a time to serve my country. And while I was gone, my wife helped her family torture my daughter. Protocol didn't protect Emma. Daryl was quiet for a moment. What are you going to do? Whatever I have to. That's what I'm afraid of. Daryl glanced at the door, then back to his brother. Look, I get it. I do. If someone hurt my kid. He stopped. Daryl didn't have kids yet, was engaged but still planning the wedding. I can't imagine what you're feeling. But Vince, you're smart. You're tactical. Don't throw your life away on revenge. It's not revenge, Vincent said quietly. It's justice. The courts. The courts take time, and time means Emma watches these people walk around free, maybe make bail, maybe intimidate witnesses. Time means she sees them on the news with their lawyers, talking about discipline and parenting rights. Vincent looked at his sleeping daughter. I won't let that happen. Daryl studied his brother for a long moment. You're planning something. Vincent didn't answer. Vince, please. Think about Emma. She needs her father. She can't have you if you're in prison. She won't have me if I'm deployed, either. My CO called while you were gone. I've got emergency leave for 3 weeks. But after that, I'm supposed to return to active duty. 3 weeks, Daryl. That's all I have. So use those 3 weeks to be with her. Help her recover. Let the DA build the case. I'll be with her every second I can. Vincent met his brother's eyes. But I'll also make sure that when I do have to leave, when I do have to go back, Emma is safe. Truly safe. Not protected by restraining orders or bail conditions. Safe because the people who hurt her can't hurt her anymore. Daryl closed his eyes. You're scaring me. Good. Because I'm fucking terrified. Vincent's voice cracked slightly. I'm terrified that I'll fail her again. That I'll trust the system and it'll let her down. That these people will walk free and I'll be halfway around the world when they... He stopped, composed himself. I can't let that happen. Then fight it the right way. Testify. Make sure they're convicted. But don't. Daryl struggled for words. Don't become something you're not. I'm a Marine, Vincent said simply. I protect the innocent and eliminate threats. That's exactly what I am. The brothers sat in silence for a while, watching Emma sleep. Finally, Daryl stood. I'm going to get coffee. Want anything? No, thanks. After Daryl left, Vincent pulled out his phone. He had calls to make, people to contact. His JAG lawyer had already sent over preliminary information about the civilian legal process. The DA's office would meet with him tomorrow to discuss the case. But Vincent was also thinking about other things. The layout of the Cole family home, where Marcia lived alone since her husband's death. The schedules of the other suspects, where they worked, their routines. He thought about bail hearings, about how good lawyers could get people released pending trial. And he thought about what he'd learned in the Marines. Not just combat tactics, but intelligence gathering, surveillance. How to watch someone without being seen. How to gather information, find weaknesses, exploit opportunities. Vincent Kern had been planning missions for over a decade. Complex operations in hostile territory against determined enemies. This wouldn't be much different. The stakes were higher: his daughter's safety, her future, her ability to ever feel safe again. But the principles were the same. Identify the targets. Gather intelligence. Plan the operation. Execute with precision. Adapt as needed. And most importantly, complete the mission, no matter what. Emma stirred in her sleep, making a small sound of pain. Vincent held her hand gently, careful not to disturb the IV. I've got you, sweetheart, he whispered. Daddy's got you. And I promise they'll never hurt you again. It was a promise he intended to keep. Through the courts if possible, through other means if necessary. 3 weeks. He had 3 weeks to make sure Emma would be safe when he had to leave. 3 weeks to wage war on the people who'd hurt his daughter. And Vincent Kern had won every war he'd ever fought. The arraignment hearing happened fast. 48 hours after the arrests, all 9 suspects stood before Judge Thomas Graves in Richmond County Superior Court. Vincent sat in the gallery with Daryl and his JAG lawyer, Captain Stan Murray, watching as the defense attorneys argued for bail. Your Honor. Winston Marsh stood before the bench, every inch the successful defense attorney in his expensive suit. My client, Mrs. Marcia Cole, is a 62-year-old grandmother with no prior criminal record. She's a respected member of the community, active in her church, and poses no flight risk. House arrest with an ankle monitor would be more than sufficient. Mr. Marsh, Judge Graves interrupted. Your client is accused of aggravated child abuse involving torture of a 5-year-old. The state has video evidence. Taken out of context, Your Honor, Mrs. Cole was attempting to discipline her granddaughter who had been exhibiting increasingly violent and disturbing behavior. The method was excessive, certainly, but the intent was not malicious. Vincent's hands clenched into fists. Captain Murray put a hand on his arm. Easy, the lawyer murmured. District Attorney Mark Norton stood to respond. Norton was younger than Vincent expected, maybe 40, but he had a reputation as a bulldog prosecutor. Your Honor, the state objects strenuously to any bail. We have 9 co-defendants who participated in or facilitated the systematic torture of a child. The video evidence shows them laughing while the victim screamed. This wasn't discipline, it was sadism. Release them, and we risk witness intimidation, evidence tampering, and potential flight. Judge Graves reviewed the documents before him, then looked up at the defendants. All 9 stood in orange jumpsuits, shackled at the wrists and ankles. Marcia Cole looked defiant. Brittany looked pale, her eyes darting to Vincent in the gallery before looking away. Todd Harden kept his head down. Bail is set at $500,000 each, Graves finally announced. Cash or bond. House arrest with GPS monitoring. No contact with the victim or any witnesses. Surrender of passports. If any defendant violates these conditions, bail will be revoked immediately. He banged his gavel. Next case. Vincent stood abruptly, ignoring Captain Murray's protest, and walked out of the courtroom. By the time Daryl caught up with him in the hallway, Vincent had his phone out, already making calls. Vince, wait. $500,000 each. The Cole family can cover that easily. Vincent's voice was tight with controlled fury. Marcia alone has $3 million in assets. They'll be out by tonight, with house arrest and GPS, which means they're still free. Still out there. Vincent paced the courthouse hallway. Emma's being released from the hospital tomorrow. You know what the doctor said, she'll need months of therapy, both physical and psychological. And these people will be less than 5 miles away. Daryl grabbed his brother's arm. The restraining orders are pieces of paper. Vincent turned on his brother, and Daryl actually stepped back from the intensity in his eyes. You know what happens in domestic violence cases, in child abuse cases? Restraining orders get violated all the time. And by the time the police respond, it's too late. So what's your plan? Daryl kept his voice low. Because whatever you're thinking, I'm thinking I need to know exactly where these people are, what they're doing, and who they're talking to. Vincent's mind was already working through the logistics. The GPS monitors will tell me their locations. Public records will tell me their assets, their properties, their vehicles. Social media will tell me their associates. That's surveillance. That's preparation. Vincent met his brother's eyes. I'm not going to hurt anyone, Daryl. Not unless I have to. But I need to be ready. Ready for what? Vincent didn't answer. His phone buzzed a text from D.A. Norton asking to meet. I have to go. Can you pick up Emma from the hospital tomorrow? I'll meet you there by noon. Vince. But Vincent was already walking away, mind churning through scenarios and contingencies. The arraignment had confirmed his worst fears. The system was going to let these people out, and once they were out, anything could happen. The meeting with D.A. Norton took place in his office, a cramped space filled with case files and legal books. Norton poured 2 coffees and gestured Vincent to sit. That was quite a scene today. Norton said, Winston Marsh is a shark, but Judge Graves could have set bail much lower given the defendant's lack of priors. $500,000 sends a message. It's not enough. I know you think that. Norton leaned back in his chair. But it's the system we have. Now, let's talk about the case. I'm charging all 9 defendants with aggravated child abuse under Georgia Code 16570. It carries 5 to 20 years per count. With the video evidence and Emma's injuries, we have a strong case. How strong? Norton hesitated. 90% conviction rate if we go to trial. But here's the thing, Marsh is going to push for a plea deal. He'll want his clients to plead to lesser charges in exchange for reduced sentences. And given the costs of a trial, the risk of appeals, and the trauma of putting Emma on the stand, no deals. Vincent's voice was flat. They all go to trial. They all get maximum sentences. It doesn't work that way. Make it work. Vincent leaned forward. I've been in combat, Mr. Norton. I've seen what happens when you compromise with the enemy. When you show mercy to people who don't deserve it, they use it against you. These people tortured my daughter. They laughed while they did it. And now you want me to agree to let them plead down to something lesser so they can be out in 5 years? Norton was quiet for a moment. I understand your anger, but as a prosecutor, I have to think about what's best for the case. What gives us the highest probability of convictions that stick on appeal? And sometimes that means accepting deals. Then let me ask you something. Vincent's voice was eerily calm. If it was your daughter, would you accept a deal? Norton looked away. That's not fair. Justice isn't supposed to be fair. It's supposed to be right. Vincent stood. Prosecute them to the fullest extent. No deals. If you won't, I'll find a prosecutor who will. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. Vincent moved to the door, then turned back. I have 3 weeks of emergency leave before I have to return to active duty. 3 weeks to make sure my daughter is safe, and these people face consequences. I prefer those consequences to be legal ones. But if the law fails, Emma, he let the sentence hang. Well, I'm sure you understand. After leaving the DA's office, Vincent drove to a storage facility on the outskirts of Augusta. He rented a unit under his name, paying 6 months in advance in cash. Then, he began moving equipment from his truck into the unit. His service weapon and ammunition went in first, secured in a gun safe. Then his tactical gear, body armor, night vision goggles, zip ties, communication equipment, maps of Augusta and the surrounding counties, a laptop with encryption software, a drone he'd purchased online before leaving Afghanistan, still in its box. Vincent wasn't planning violence. Not yet, but he was planning for every contingency. If the Cole family violated their restraining orders, if they tried to intimidate witnesses, if they came anywhere near Emma, or if the courts failed, if expensive lawyers and legal maneuvering and sympathetic juries let them walk, then Vincent would be ready. He spent the afternoon researching the Cole family. Marsh's house was a large property in the Somerville area, old money elegance with a long driveway and privacy hedges. Brittany, he still couldn't think of her as his wife anymore, was staying there, having posted bail within hours of the arraignment. Todd Harden lived in a rental duplex near downtown. The Knox couple owned a small home in a working-class neighborhood. The Holman family were scattered across 2 addresses. Vincent plotted all 9 locations on a map. 5 miles at the closest point, 8 miles at the furthest. The GPS monitoring meant they had to stay within Richmond County except for approved travel. The restraining orders meant they couldn't come within 500 feet of Emma or Vincent. It was something, but it wasn't enough. That evening, Vincent returned to the hospital to find Emma awake, sitting up in bed with Daryl. She couldn't talk yet, her mouth was too swollen, the stitches too fresh, but she reached for Vincent the moment he walked in, and he scooped her up carefully, holding her against his chest. Hey, sweetheart, Daddy's here. Emma clung to him, making small whimpering sounds. The victim advocate, a gentle woman named Shelley Lewis, had been working with her on processing the trauma. She's doing remarkably well, Shelley told Vincent quietly. Children are resilient, but she'll need ongoing therapy, and she may have nightmares for a while. She'll get whatever she needs, Vincent said. Money's not an issue. Actually, money was an issue. His Marine salary was decent but not generous, and while TRICARE would cover Emma's medical expenses, therapy, and the other costs of recovery would add up. Brittany had been a stay-at-home mom by her choice, not Vincent's, which meant she hadn't contributed income. The family had lived off Vincent's salary and deployments bonuses. Now Vincent would need to support Emma alone, cover legal costs, and probably hire private security until the trial was over. His savings would be gone in months, but that was a problem for later. Right now, Emma needed him. He sat with her until she fell asleep, then stepped into the hallway where Daryl waited. I've been thinking, Daryl said, about what you said earlier. About being ready. Yeah, I can help. Daryl kept his voice low. I can't be part of anything illegal. I've got my teaching license, my whole career. But surveillance? Monitoring public records? Keeping tabs on these people legally? That, I can do. Vincent studied his brother. You sure? She's my niece. And what they did to her? Daryl's jaw tightened. Yeah, I'm sure. Just promise me you won't do anything stupid. Vincent almost smiled. I promise I'll do everything smart. That's not the same thing. No, Vincent agreed. It's not. Emma came home on Christmas Eve. Vincent had spent the previous day transforming the house, removing anything that might remind her of what happened. The basement door was locked and sealed. Brittany's belongings were boxed up and moved to the garage. New locks were installed on every door and window. Vincent had even replaced the kitchen scissors with safety scissors and hidden them in a locked drawer. Daryl helped him set up a security system, cameras on every entrance, motion sensors, a panic button by Emma's bed that would immediately call 911. It was probably overkill, but Vincent didn't care. His daughter needed to feel safe. They made Christmas as normal as possible. Emma still couldn't talk, could only eat soft foods and liquids, but she smiled when she saw the presents under the tree. Vincent gave her the stuffed unicorn he'd brought from Afghanistan, and she hugged it tight, tears streaming down her face. That night, after Emma had fallen asleep in her bed, Vincent had moved a cot into her room so he could be there if she woke up. Daryl sat with Vincent in the living room. I did some digging, Daryl said quietly. The Cole family's finances. Marcia has $3.2 million in assets, mostly from her late husband's life insurance and investments. She owns her house outright, plus 2 rental properties. Brittany has nothing in her name, everything was joint with you, which means you could freeze those accounts if you file for divorce. Already did. Filed this morning. Vincent had met with a divorce attorney, a sharp woman named Joanna Pacheco, who'd laid out his options. Brittany gets nothing. Not after what she did. Good. Daryl pulled out his laptop. Now, about the others. Todd Harden works as an electrician for a local contractor. Barry Knox is in construction. Randy Holman has a DUI on his record from 2 years ago. Laurie Emery and Gloria Holman don't work, they live off their late parents' estate, which Marcia controls as executor. So, Marcia's the money behind all of them. Essentially, she's paying their legal fees. Winston Marsh doesn't come cheap. He's probably charging $50,000 per defendant. That's $450,000 for all 9. Plus, bail bonds, which she secured with her properties. Daryl looked up. If you want to hurt these people, hit Marcia's finances. Without her money, their defense falls apart. Vincent considered this. How would I do that? Well, legally, you could file a civil suit for damages. Medical costs, Emma's therapy, pain, and suffering. With what they did, a jury would award millions. You could put liens on Marcia's properties, freeze her accounts pending the outcome. And illegally? Daryl hesitated. I didn't say that. But you thought it. Vincent met his brother's eyes. Tell me. Marcia's rental properties are her main source of income. If something happened to them, fire damage, code violations, anything that forced her to spend money on repairs or made them uninhabitable, her cash flow would dry up fast. Her investments are mostly in a trust managed by a financial advisor in Atlanta. If someone accessed that trust, moved the money around, even temporarily, it would take months to untangle. And without liquid assets, she can't pay her lawyers, or her bail bonds, or anything else. Daryl closed his laptop. But that would be illegal. Wire fraud, arson if you're thinking what I think you're thinking, and a dozen other charges. Vincent was quiet for a long time. What if someone else did it? Someone with no connection to me? Who? You can't just hire a Daryl stopped. Vince? No. There are people who do this kind of work. Private investigators who aren't too particular about methods. Hackers. Corporate espionage specialists. I served with guys who went into that field after they left the military. Vincent wasn't sure if he was serious or just exploring options, but the more he thought about it, the more sense it made. Legal pressure from the front, illegal pressure from the back. Squeeze them from both sides until they break. And if you get caught, I won't. Vincent's voice carried the absolute certainty of someone who'd planned hundreds of missions. Because I won't be the one doing it. I'll be here, with Emma, visible and accounted for. My brother, the teacher, will be with me. We'll have alibis. And whoever I hire will be professional enough not to leave a trail. Daryl rubbed his face. I can't believe we're having this conversation. Neither can I. But here we are. Vincent stood, paced to the window. Outside, the neighborhood was dark and quiet. Christmas lights twinkling on houses where families were safe and whole. These people hurt my daughter, Daryl. They tortured her, and the system is going to let them out on bail. Let them hire expensive lawyers. Let them drag this out for months or years. Meanwhile, Emma has to live with what they did. She has to see them on the news, has to know they're out there. I know. So yes, I'm considering illegal options. Because legal options aren't enough. Vincent turned back to his brother. But I'm not stupid. I won't do anything that can be traced back to me or that puts Emma at risk. I'll be smart about it. Daryl was quiet for a long moment. If you're serious about this, I know someone. From college. He went into cybersecurity after graduation, but he was always more interested in the hacking side than the protection side. Last I heard, he was doing freelance work. Not exactly legal, but not explicitly illegal either. Gray area stuff. What's his name? Max Byers. Lives in Savannah. I haven't talked to him in years, but Daryl pulled out his phone, scrolled through old contacts. Yeah, I still have his number. Can you trust him? With this? I don't know. Daryl looked conflicted. But if you're going to do this, better to use someone with skills than try it yourself and fuck it up. Vincent nodded slowly. Set up a meeting. Somewhere public, neutral ground. I want to talk to him face to face. And if he says no, then I'll find someone else. Vincent's expression was hard. One way or another, the Cole family is going down. The only question is how much collateral damage they take with them. After Daryl left, Vincent checked on Emma one more time. She was sleeping peacefully, the stuffed unicorn clutched in her arms. He adjusted her blanket, kissed her forehead gently, and returned to the living room where his laptop waited. He had research to do. Winston Marsh, the defense attorney, had a reputation for getting clients acquitted or reduced sentences through technical, legal maneuvering. Vincent needed to understand the man's strategies, his weaknesses, his past cases. The other 8 defendants had their own lawyers, but they were smaller fish. Marsh was the shark, and if Vincent could find a way to neutralize him, the rest would crumble. He spent hours reading case files, court transcripts, legal blogs analyzing Marsh's tactics. The attorney had a particular trick he used in abuse cases. He'd argue that the defendant had been trying to protect the child from their own behavior, that the discipline, however excessive, came from a place of love and concern. It was bullshit, but it worked. Juries wanted to believe that adults didn't hurt children out of malice, that there must have been some justification. Marsh exploited that cognitive dissonance masterfully. Vincent also researched Emma's supposed behavioral problems, the narrative Marsh was already building. He called Emma's daycare, spoke to her teacher who confirmed Emma had never been violent or aggressive. He gathered report cards, medical records, anything that showed Emma as the sweet, gentle child she was. But he also thought about the bigger picture. Even if Marsh failed, even if all 9 defendants were convicted, they'd only serve a few years, maybe 5, maybe 10 at most, and then they'd be out still relatively young, still capable of causing harm. That wasn't enough. Vincent needed permanent solutions. His phone buzzed a text from Daryl. Max says he'll meet you. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., coffee shop in Savannah. Forsyth Park Cafe. Come alone. Vincent replied with a thumbs up, then continued his research. He was looking up property records for Marsh's rental properties when another text came through, this one from an unknown number. Stop what you're doing or you'll regret it. Vincent stared at the message. Then, he checked the number. It was masked, probably a burner phone or VoIP service. He took a screenshot, saved it, and replied simply, "Who is this?" No response. But the message was clear enough. Someone in the Cole family, or someone working for them, was already trying to intimidate him. They had no idea who they were fucking with. Vincent added the message to a file. He was keeping documentation of everything related to the case. Then he pulled up the GPS tracking information the DA's office had shared with him. All 9 defendants were showing at their home addresses, ankle monitors reporting in regularly. For now, they were following the rules. But Vincent knew from experience that rules meant nothing to people without honor. The Cole family had already shown what they were capable of. It was only a matter of time before they tried something else. And when they did, Vincent would be ready. He worked through the night, dozing briefly on the couch, always listening for Emma's voice or footsteps. Around 6 a.m., she woke crying, and he was there immediately, scooping her up, holding her while she sobbed into his shoulder. "Nightmare," he murmured. "Just a nightmare, sweetheart. You're safe. Daddy's got you." Emma's small hands clutched at his shirt. She tried to say something, but the words came out garbled and painful. Vincent could see the frustration in her eyes, his articulate, curious daughter who loved to ask questions and tell stories. Now, unable to speak. "It's okay," he told her. "Your voice will come back. The doctors promised. And until then, Daddy understands you. We'll figure it out together." He carried her to the kitchen, made her favorite breakfast, scrambled eggs, mashed up soft enough for her injured mouth. She ate slowly, painfully, but she ate. That was something. As the sun rose on Christmas Day, Vincent sat with his daughter and made a silent promise. Not just to protect her, not just to get justice for her, but to make absolutely certain that the people who'd hurt her would never hurt anyone again. Whatever it took, however long it took. Vincent Kern had 3 weeks before his deployment resumed. It would be enough. Savannah was 2 hours from Augusta, a beautiful city of historic squares and Spanish moss. Vincent made the drive alone, leaving Emma with Daryl and his fiancée, Melinda Kuhn, who'd come down from Colombia for the holidays. Vincent had briefed Melinda on everything. The woman was a high school counselor, trained in trauma response, and she'd immediately bonded with Emma. The Forsyth Park Cafe was a small place with outdoor seating, crowded with tourists and locals enjoying the mild December weather. Vincent arrived early, scoped the location, identified exits and sight lines out of habit. Then he ordered coffee and waited. Max Byers arrived exactly at 2 p.m. He was tall and gangly, early 30s, with a pale complexion of someone who spent too much time indoors. He wore glasses and a flannel shirt, looked more like a college student than a cybersecurity specialist. "Vincent?" Max sat down without shaking hands. "Daryl said you needed help with something delicate." "I do." Vincent kept his voice low. "But first, I need to know if you can be trusted. This conversation doesn't leave this table." Max studied him for a moment. "I know who you are. I Googled you after Daryl called. Marine, decorated veteran, currently on emergency leave. I also know what happened to your daughter. It was on the news. Then you understand why I'm here." "I can guess." Max leaned back. "You want digital warfare. Financial attacks, reputation damage, evidence, manipulation. The kind of work that's technically illegal, but morally justified. Something like that." Max was quiet for a moment. "I've done work like this before. Corporate espionage, mostly. Exposing corruption, helping whistleblowers, that sort of thing. I don't steal money or destroy people for profit. But I do believe in justice outside the legal system when the legal system fails." He met Vincent's eyes. "Tell me what you need." Vincent told him. Not everything. He kept some details vague, but enough. The Cole family's finances. Marcia's control over the family money. The expensive lawyers draining those resources. The rental properties providing her income. "I need her financially ruined," Vincent concluded. "Bankrupt, unable to pay for her defense, unable to make bail if it gets revoked. I need her desperate and alone." Max nodded slowly. "That's doable. Her financial advisor in Atlanta, I can probably access that trust through social engineering. Fake emails, phishing attacks, the usual. Once I'm in, I can move money around, create enough confusion that it'll take her months to straighten out. By then, the criminal trial will be over." "What about the rental properties?" "That's trickier. I can't commit arson for you. That's way outside my skill set and moral comfort zone. But I can file anonymous complaints with code enforcement. Report violations, force inspections. If there are any actual violations, and there usually are in rental properties, the city will shut them down until they're fixed. That costs money and eliminates her rental income." "How much will this cost me?" $20,000. Half up front, half when it's done." Max saw Vincent's expression. "I know that's steep, but this is high-risk work. If I get caught, I'm looking at federal charges." Vincent didn't have $20,000. He had maybe 8 in savings, and most of that would go to Emma's therapy and legal costs. But he could get it. He could take out loans, max out credit cards. For Emma's safety, he'd mortgage his future. "Deal. But I need something else, too." "What?" "Information. I need to know everything about the defense attorneys, especially Winston Marsh. His finances, his communications, his strategy. Anything that gives us leverage. Max whistled softly. Attorney-client privilege is supposed to be sacred. If I hack into their communications, nothing we find can be used in court. I don't care about court. I care about knowing what they're planning. Vincent leaned forward. Can you do it? Probably. Marsh's firm has digital security, but nothing I haven't broken through before. Max pulled out a laptop. Give me until New Year's. I'll have preliminary intelligence by then. Financial disruption will take another week after that. They worked out the details: dead drops for payment, encrypted communications, how Vincent would receive the information without creating a digital trail. Max was thorough and professional, clearly experienced in this kind of work. As they were wrapping up, Max asked, "What happens after? Say I ruin Marcia Cole financially, leak her lawyer's strategy, expose whatever skeletons are in her closet. What then?" "Then the legal system does its job," Vincent said. "Without expensive lawyers manipulating the process, without unlimited resources to drag things out, they'll face real justice. And if they don't? If they still beat the charges somehow?" Vincent's expression went cold. "Then I handle it personally." Max nodded slowly. "Fair enough. Just be careful, man. You've got a daughter to raise. Don't throw your life away." "I won't." Vincent stood, left cash for the coffee. "I'll be in touch." The drive back to Augusta gave Vincent time to think. He was crossing lines, hiring someone to commit cybercrimes, planning to destroy people's finances and reputations. It was illegal, unethical by conventional standards, and if caught, he'd face serious consequences. But Vincent had spent his adult life in combat zones where conventional morality didn't apply, where you did what was necessary to protect your unit and complete your mission. This wasn't different. Emma was his unit. Her safety was the mission, and anyone who threatened that mission was the enemy. He'd eliminated plenty of enemies in Afghanistan. This time, he'd do it with lawyers and financial pressure and digital warfare instead of rifles. But the principle was the same. Vincent arrived home to find Emma coloring at the kitchen table with Melinda while Daryl cooked dinner. The scene was so normal, so peaceful, that Vincent felt his chest tighten. This was what Emma deserved: safety, normalcy, a childhood free of terror. That evening, after Emma had gone to bed, Vincent sat with Daryl and Melinda and told them about Max Byers. Daryl wasn't surprised. Melinda looked conflicted. "You're playing a dangerous game," she said quietly. "If this goes wrong, it won't. But if it does, Emma loses her father. She's already lost her mother. Her mother tried to hurt her." Vincent cut in. "Brittany doesn't get to be part of Emma's life anymore." "I know. I'm not defending Brittany. But Vincent, Emma needs you. And if you're in prison, I won't be." Vincent's voice was firm. "I'm being careful. Max is a professional. The work he's doing can't be traced back to me. And even if someone suspected, there's no evidence." Melinda exchanged a look with Daryl, then sighed. "Okay. I hope you're right. For Emma's sake." That night, Vincent received an email from D.A. Norton. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for January 8th, 13 days away. At that hearing, the judge would determine if there was enough evidence to proceed to trial. With the video evidence, it should be a slam dunk. But Vincent knew that Winston Marsh would try to get the video suppressed. He'd argue it was taken during a moment of stress, that it didn't show the full context, that Emma had been misbehaving beforehand. The defense would put together their own narrative. Vincent needed to counter that narrative, not just legally, but publicly. The court of public opinion mattered, especially in a case like this, where jury selection would be critical. He spent the next several days carefully leaking information to local journalists. Not enough to compromise the case, but enough to shape the story. Photos of Emma, before the abuse, smiling, happy, clearly not a violent child. Statements from her daycare teacher. Medical records showing no history of behavioral problems. The media ate it up. By December 28th, every local news station was running stories about the little girl tortured by her family and the Marine father fighting for justice. The Cole family, meanwhile, stayed silent on advice of their lawyers. But Vincent knew they were planning something. The threatening text message had been just the beginning, and on December 29th, his suspicions were confirmed. He was at home with Emma when his phone rang. "D.A. Norton. We have a problem." Norton said without preamble. Winston Marsh just filed a motion to dismiss. He's arguing that you illegally detained his clients when you locked them in the sunroom, that any evidence gathered after that point is fruit of the poisonous tree. Vincent's jaw clenched. That's bullshit. I was protecting my daughter, I know, and Judge Graves will probably deny the motion. But Marsh is smart. He's laying groundwork for an appeal if they're convicted. He's also filed motions to suppress the video evidence and to get separate trials for each defendant. Norton sighed. This is going to be a long fight, Vincent. Months, maybe more than a year before we even get to trial. That's not acceptable. It's the reality. Look, I'm doing everything I can, but Marsh is one of the best defense attorneys in the state. He's going to use every trick, every delay tactic, every technical loophole. Then find a way to shut him down. I'm trying. But I need you to be patient, and I need you to not do anything stupid. I heard about the media leaks that was smart, building public support. But if you do anything illegal, anything that gives Marsh ammunition, it could torpedo the entire case. After hanging up, Vincent sat in silence, thinking, a year or more until trial. That meant Emma would have to testify, would have to relive her trauma in front of her abusers. It meant months of waiting, of uncertainty, of fear, unless Vincent found a way to accelerate things. His phone buzzed an encrypted message from Max Byers. Phase 1 complete. Check your email. Vincent opened his laptop, accessed the encrypted email account Max had set up. Inside was a treasure trove of information. Financial records showing Marcia Cole's trust had been accessed and funds moved to offshore accounts still under her name, but effectively frozen by banking irregularities that would take months to resolve. Code enforcement complaints had been filed on both rental properties, with inspections scheduled for the first week of January. But the real gold was the attorney-client communications Max had intercepted. Emails between Winston Marsh and his co-counsel discussing strategy. And the strategy was exactly what Vincent had feared. Marsh planned to put Emma on trial, to paint her as a disturbed child who'd been hurting other kids, who'd been lying and manipulating. To argue that Brittany and her family had been trying to protect the community from a dangerous child. The scissors incident would be framed as a last resort, a desperate measure by a loving grandmother trying to stop a child from spreading lies. It was vile, it was brilliant, and it might actually work. Vincent read through the emails 3 times, his rage growing with each pass. Then he forwarded them to DA Norton with a simple message, anonymous source. Use it. Norton would know the communications were obtained illegally. He couldn't use them in court, but he could use them to anticipate Marsh's strategy, to prepare counterarguments to be ready. Vincent also forwarded them to several journalists with a note, proof the defense plans to blame the victim. Off the record, for background only, within 24 hours, the narrative shifted. News stories began questioning the defense's ethics, speculating about their strategy, expressing outrage at the idea of putting a traumatized child on trial. Public opinion, already sympathetic to Emma, solidified into something more, anger at the Cole family and their lawyers. On New Year's Eve, Vincent received another threatening message. You're making powerful enemies. Back off or face consequences. This time, Vincent didn't just screenshot it. He called Detective Beck, reported it officially. Beck traced the number. It came from a burner phone purchased at a store in Augusta 3 days earlier. Security footage showed Todd Harden buying it. That's a violation of his bail conditions, Beck said with satisfaction. No contact with you or your family. I'm arresting him tonight. Good. Vincent felt a grim satisfaction. 1 down, 8 to go. But he wasn't done. On January 1st, he paid Max Byers the second half of his fee money he'd borrowed from Daryl and would pay back somehow. In return, Max delivered the final phase of his work. Marcia Cole's financial advisor discovered the irregularities in her trust and immediately froze all transactions pending investigation. The code enforcement inspections found numerous violations in her rental properties, faulty wiring, mold, structural issues that would cost hundreds of thousands to fix. Suddenly, Marcia had no liquid assets and mounting debts. By January 3rd, she'd stopped paying her lawyers. By January 5th, Winston Marsh had filed a motion to withdraw from the case, citing irreconcilable differences with the client regarding payment and strategy. The other 8 defendants' lawyers followed suit over the next 2 days. By the time of the preliminary hearing on January 8th, All 9 defendants were represented by public defenders who'd had less than 24 hours to prepare. The hearing was a massacre. Without Marsh's experience and legal maneuvering, without the resources to hire expert witnesses or consultants, the defense collapsed. The video evidence was shown in court. Several people in the gallery gasped. One woman actually vomited. Emma's medical records were entered. The daycare teacher testified about Emma's gentle nature. Judge Graves ordered all 9 defendants bound over for trial, set for March 15th. He also revoked bail for Todd Harden due to the threatening text and increased bail for the others to $1 million each, amounts they couldn't possibly make without Marsh's resources. All 9 were remanded to custody pending trial. Vincent watched them being led away in shackles. And for the first time since this nightmare began, he felt something like hope. The system was working. Slowly, imperfectly, but working. That night, he held Emma while she slept, thinking about what came next. The trial would still be brutal. Emma would probably have to testify, though DA Norton was trying to avoid it by using the video evidence. But even if she did testify, it would be with her abusers behind bars, unable to hurt her. And after the trial, after the convictions, Vincent would return to active duty knowing Emma was safe. He'd arranged for Daryl and Melinda to take custody. While he was deployed, they were getting married in February. Perfect timing to become Emma's guardians. Everything was falling into place. Almost too perfectly. Vincent's phone buzzed. Another message from Max. Final report attached. We're done, but be careful. These people are desperate now. Vincent opened the attachment. It was a detailed breakdown of everything Max had done, every vulnerability he'd exploited, every piece of intelligence he'd gathered. At the bottom was a note. Destroyed all records on my end. As far as anyone knows, this was just bad luck and incompetence on the Cole family's part. You're clean. Vincent deleted the message, destroyed the email account, and sat back. He was clean. The Cole family was broken. Emma was safe. But Max's warning echoed in his mind. These people are desperate now. Desperate people did desperate things. And Vincent had learned in combat that the most dangerous enemy was one with nothing left to lose. He double-checked the security system, made sure all doors and windows were locked, and settled in to watch over his daughter. The preliminary hearing was over. The trial was 2 months away. 2 months to stay vigilant. 2 months to make sure nothing went wrong. 2 months to finish what he'd started. The days following the preliminary hearing fell into a routine. Vincent spent mornings with Emma doing therapy, physical therapy for her tongue, which was healing but still painful, and psychological therapy with Dr. Shelley Lewis to process the trauma. Emma was making progress. She could speak now, though her words were slurred and she struggled with certain sounds. But she was trying, and that was what mattered. Afternoons were for trial preparation. DA Norton's team interviewed Vincent repeatedly, building their case. They walked him through every detail of discovering the abuse, his actions that day, Emma's condition. Norton was confident about the trial but cautious about Emma testifying. We have the video, Norton explained during one meeting. That's powerful evidence. But defense will argue it doesn't show what happened before. That Emma had been acting out. If we put her on the stand, they'll cross-examine her. She's young, traumatized, it could backfire. So, don't put her on the stand, Vincent said. Use the medical evidence, the video, my testimony. That should be enough. Should be. But juries are unpredictable. Norton shuffled papers. The good news is the public defenders are overwhelmed. They're handling multiple cases each. Haven't had time to build a solid defense. With Marsh gone, the Cole family lost their best weapon. Vincent nodded but said nothing. He knew exactly why Marsh was gone, why the family's finances had collapsed, and he felt no guilt about it. In the evenings, Vincent researched what came next. After the trial, assuming convictions, the defendants would be sentenced. Georgia law allowed for 5 to 20 years per count of aggravated child abuse. With 9 defendants each facing multiple counts, the sentences could be substantial. But Vincent also researched parole guidelines, early release programs, good behavior credits. Even with 20-year sentences, most would be out in 10 to 12 years. And some might get less depending on the judge. It wasn't enough, but it was what the law allowed. On January 15th, Vincent's emergency leave officially ended. He had to report back to Camp Lejeune for reassignment. But his Lieutenant Colonel Norman Sweeney, called him personally. Kern, I've reviewed your situation. Your daughter's custody arrangements, the upcoming trial. I'm extending your leave through the end of March. After the trial, we'll reassess. Sir, I appreciate that, but that's an order, Staff Sergeant. Your daughter needs you more than the Corps does right now. Besides, you've earned it. 3 tours, decorated service. Never once asked for special treatment. The Corps takes care of its own. Vincent felt unexpected emotion welling up. Thank you, sir. Just make sure those bastards get what's coming to them. I will, sir. With the extension secured, Vincent could focus entirely on Emma and the trial. Daryl and Melinda had moved temporarily to Augusta, staying in a rental near Vincent's house. They'd formally filed for guardianship, which would take effect if Vincent was deployed after the trial. Emma had bonded with them quickly, especially with Melinda, who had a gentle touch with traumatized kids. She's resilient, Melinda told Vincent one evening after putting Emma to bed. More than you'd expect. But she'll carry this with her forever. Not just the physical scars, but the psychological ones. I know. She asks about Brittany sometimes. Asks why her mommy did that to her. Melinda's voice was soft. What do you tell her? Vincent had struggled with that question. How do you explain to a 5-year-old that her mother participated in her torture? That the people who were supposed to protect her had hurt her instead? I tell her that some people make very bad choices, Vincent said finally. That her mommy made a bad choice, and now she has to face consequences. But that Emma is safe now, and nothing like that will ever happen again. Does she believe you? I don't know, but I'll keep saying it until she does. On January 20th, Vincent received a call from Detective Beck. We've got a development. Renee Knox wants to make a deal. Vincent met Beck at the police station. Renee Knox sat in an interrogation room, looking haggard and scared. She'd lost weight in custody, her orange jumpsuit hanging loose on her frame. Her public defender, a tired-looking woman named Francine Christensen, sat beside her. My client wants to cooperate, Christensen said. She'll testify against the other defendants in exchange for reduced charges. D.A. Norton, who joined the meeting, leaned forward. What can she offer? Renee spoke quietly. I can tell you everything. How it started. Why we did it. She couldn't meet Vincent's eyes. I can testify that it wasn't discipline. That Marcia was. She was angry. She'd been drinking. Emma had talked back to her earlier that day, and Marcia said the child needed to learn respect. What about Brittany? Norton asked. Brittany. Renee hesitated. Brittany filmed it because Marcia told her to. Said they needed documentation in case Emma told anyone, so they could show she was lying. Marcia's always been like that, controlling, manipulative. We all just went along with it. Vincent wanted to lunge across the table, to grab Renee and demand why she hadn't stopped it, why she'd held down his daughter while her tongue was cut. But he forced himself to stay still, to let Norton handle it. That's not much of a defense, Norton said. Going along with it doesn't excuse participation. I know, but I can testify about Marcia's history. There were other incidents. Not as bad, but she hit Brittany's kids before. Todd's kids too. We all knew she had a temper, but she's got money, and Renee's voice broke. We needed her money. She controlled everything. If you went against her, she'd cut you off. This was new information, and Norton pounced on it. Other children were abused? Not like Emma. Spanking mostly, sometimes slapping. But she'd justify it as discipline, and we never questioned her. Renee wiped her eyes. I'm not trying to excuse what I did. I held that little girl down. I helped hurt her. I deserve to go to prison. But if my testimony can help convict the others, especially Marcia, I want to do that. After several hours of negotiation, a deal was struck. Renee would plead guilty to a lesser charge, facilitation of child abuse, instead of aggravated child abuse, and receive a 10-year sentence with possibility of parole after 5. In exchange, she'd testify against the other 8 defendants and provide evidence of Marcia's past abuse. Vincent hated the deal, hated that Renee would get a reduced sentence when she'd participated in Emma's torture. But Norton convinced him it was strategic. One cooperative defendant breaks the other's solidarity, Norton explained. Renee's testimony establishes motive, that they were all under Marcia's control, that she was the ringleader. It also opens the door to bring in evidence of past bad acts, which is usually inadmissible but becomes relevant when showing pattern of behavior. And the others? The others will panic. They'll start turning on each other, trying to cut their own deals. By the time we get to trial, the Cole family will be in complete disarray. Norton was right. Within a week, 2 more defendants approached the DA with deal offers. Barry Knox, Renee's husband, offered similar testimony in exchange for a reduced sentence. Gloria Holman, Marcia's sister, claimed she tried to stop it, but had been threatened by Marcia. Norton rejected both deals. "We don't need them anymore," he told Vincent. "We have Renee's testimony, which is enough. Let the others face full charges." The trial was scheduled for March 15th, but on February 1st, another development emerged. Brittany's public defender filed a motion for a psychiatric evaluation, claiming Brittany had been suffering from postpartum depression and was not in her right mind during the abuse. Vincent read the motion with disgust. Emma was 5 years old, well past any postpartum period. It was a desperate ploy, and he expected Judge Graves to deny it. But Graves granted the evaluation, setting back the trial by 2 weeks to allow time for the assessment. Vincent was furious until Norton explained the strategy. "Let them have their evaluation," Norton said. "They won't find what they want. Brittany's been evaluated multiple times since arrest, no signs of serious mental illness. This just wastes their time and makes them look desperate." While waiting for the trial, Vincent focused on Emma. Her physical therapy was progressing well. She could eat normally now, though certain foods still hurt. Her speech was improving daily. Psychologically, she was still fragile, prone to nightmares and anxiety, but Shelley Lewis said that was normal. "She's processing the trauma in her own way," Shelley explained. "Children are remarkable in their ability to heal, but it takes time. The most important thing is that she feels safe, and with you she does." Vincent made sure of it. He was with Emma constantly, rarely letting her out of his sight. Daryl and Melinda helped when Vincent needed breaks, but otherwise, he was there. They developed routines: breakfast together, therapy, lunch, quiet time, playtime, dinner, bedtime stories. Simple, predictable, safe. On February 14th, Valentine's Day, Emma made Vincent a card at Melinda's suggestion. It was a simple crayon drawing of 2 stick figures, one big, one small, holding hands. Inside, in Emma's careful 5-year-old handwriting, it said, "I love you, Daddy. Thank you for saving me." Vincent held that card and wept for the first time since discovering the abuse. He'd been so focused on justice, on revenge, on destroying the people who'd hurt his daughter, that he'd almost forgotten the most important thing. Emma was alive. She was healing. She was safe. That evening, after Emma had gone to bed, Vincent made a decision. Whatever happened at the trial, whether the defendants got maximum sentences or minimum, whether the justice system failed or succeeded, Vincent was done with revenge. He'd done enough. Broken the Cole family financially, ensured they'd lost their expensive lawyers, gathered evidence and testimony that would almost certainly lead to convictions. The rest was out of his hands, and maybe that was okay. He called Max Byers, asked for one final piece of information: had Max left any traces, anything that could come back to bite them? "Nothing," Max assured him. "I was careful. The financial irregularities look like banking errors. The code enforcement complaints were anonymous and legitimate. The email intercepts left no trace. You're clean, Vincent. Walk away. That's the plan." "Good. Your daughter's lucky to have you." After hanging up, Vincent sat on his back porch, looking at the stars, thinking about the future. After the trial, he returned to active duty, but only for short deployments. He'd request stateside assignments, anything that kept him close to Emma. Daryl and Melinda would have legal guardianship, but Vincent would be present in Emma's life as much as possible. They'd rebuild, move past this, give Emma the childhood she deserved, even if it was starting late. The next few weeks passed in a blur of preparation. DA Norton drilled Vincent on his testimony, walking him through what to expect from cross-examination. They practiced staying calm, not showing anger, focusing on facts rather than emotions. "The defense will try to provoke you," Norton warned. "They'll imply you overreacted, that you were violent, that you illegally detained their clients. Don't take the bait. Just stick to the facts." Vincent promised he would. But inside, He wondered if he could actually stay calm while defense attorneys tried to paint him as the villain and his daughter's torturers as victims. On March 1st, the psychiatric evaluation results came back. Brittany showed no signs of postpartum depression, no mental illness that would have impaired her judgment. The psychiatrist's report was damning. Subject demonstrates clear understanding of right and wrong, shows no remorse for her actions, and appears to have participated willingly in the abuse. That killed Brittany's defense. Her public defender tried to withdraw from the case, claiming conflict of interest, but Judge Graves denied the motion. The trial would proceed as scheduled on March 29th. The 2-week delay, plus additional time for more legal maneuvering, had pushed it back further. Vincent used the extra time to fortify Emma's routine, to make sure she felt as secure as possible. He also met with the Victim Services Coordinator to discuss what would happen at trial. Emma wouldn't be in the courtroom, she was too young, and her video statement would be used instead. But Vincent would testify, and he wanted Emma to understand what that meant. The bad people who hurt you are going to have a trial, he explained one evening. That's where a judge and jury decide if they should go to jail. Daddy has to go and tell the judge what happened. But you don't have to go. You'll stay here with Uncle Daryl and Aunt Melinda, and you'll be safe. Emma nodded seriously. Will they go to jail forever? For a long time, Vincent promised. Long enough that they can't hurt you ever again. Okay. Emma hugged her stuffed unicorn. I'm glad you came home, Daddy. I'm glad you stopped them. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. The night before the trial, Vincent couldn't sleep. He lay in Emma's room on his cot, watching her sleep peacefully, and thought about everything that had led to this moment. The emergency leave, the horrific discovery, the rage and helplessness, the decision to fight back, not just through the legal system, but through every means available. He'd broken laws, hired a hacker, destroyed people's finances, intercepted attorney-client communications. By any conventional standard, he'd gone too far. But looking at Emma now, sleeping safely, healing despite everything, Vincent couldn't bring himself to regret it. The system needed help, and he provided that help in the only way he knew how. Tomorrow, the system would get its chance. The trial would determine if the law could deliver justice. And if it did, Vincent would walk away clean, conscience clear, mission accomplished. And if it didn't, well, Vincent had contingency plans. He always did. But he hoped God. How he hoped that he wouldn't need them. March 29th dawned cold and gray. Vincent, dressed in his Marine uniform, ribbons and decorations displayed. Norton had suggested it, reminding the jury that Vincent was a decorated veteran, a man who'd served his country, someone they could trust. The Richmond County Courthouse was packed. Media trucks lined the street, reporters shouting questions as Vincent walked past with Daryl. Inside, the courtroom was standing room only. The case had attracted national attention. Marine father versus torture family, the headlines called it. The 9 defendants sat at 2 defense tables, separated by their public defenders. Marcia Cole looked diminished, her expensive clothes replaced by a simple dress, her hair gray and unkempt. Brittany wouldn't meet Vincent's eyes. Todd Harden stared at the floor. The others looked scared. Judge Graves called the court to order. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we are here today in the case of the state of Georgia versus Marcia Cole et al. 9 defendants face multiple counts of aggravated child abuse. The state bears the burden of proving beyond a reasonable doubt that each defendant committed these crimes. You will hear testimony, see evidence, and ultimately decide the defendant's fate. He looked at DA Norton. The state may present its opening statement. Norton stood, walked to the jury box. For the next 20 minutes, he laid out the state's case with devastating precision. The video evidence, still photos of Emma's injuries, medical testimony, Renee Knox's cooperation. He described the scene Vincent had discovered. The 9 adults holding down a 5-year-old girl while her grandmother cut her tongue with scissors. Several jurors looked sick. One woman was crying. Then, it was the defense's turn. The public defenders had coordinated a strategy to argue that Marcia had been the ringleader, that the others had acted under duress or coercion, that the situation had escalated beyond anyone's control. It was weak, and the jurors' expressions showed they weren't buying it. Vincent was the state's first witness. He took the stand, swore to tell the truth, and met Norton's eyes. Staff Sergeant Kern, Please tell the jury what you discovered on December 23rd. Vincent did. He kept his voice steady, sticking to the facts, describing everything from arriving home to finding Emma in the basement to securing the suspects. He didn't embellish, didn't show emotion. Just cold, clear facts. The jury was riveted. Cross-examination was brutal. Marcia's public defender, a young man named Lyle Bryant, tried to paint Vincent as violent and irrational. You grabbed my client and threw her against a wall, didn't you? I removed her from my daughter. By using physical force? Yes. You then locked 9 people in a room against their will? I secured the suspects pending police arrival. You had no legal authority to detain them. I had every authority to protect my daughter from ongoing abuse. Vincent's voice hardened slightly. If I'd been 30 seconds later, Mrs. Cole might have cut Emma's tongue off completely. I used the minimum force necessary to stop that from happening. Brian tried a few more angles but got nowhere. Vincent's testimony was rock solid. The medical examiner testified next, describing Emma's injuries in clinical detail. Then came Emma's daycare teacher, testifying about Emma's gentle nature and lack of behavioral problems. Character witnesses for Emma painted a picture of a normal, happy child. Then Norton played the video. The courtroom went silent. Vincent had to step outside. He couldn't watch it again, couldn't listen to Emma's screams. In the hallway, he paced until Daryl found him. Jury's devastated, Daryl said quietly. Half of them are crying. I saw one juror actually glare at the defendants. Good. Renee Knox testified on day 2. She was calm, remorseful, and damning. She described Marcia's history of abuse, the family's financial dependence on her, the way she controlled everyone through money and intimidation. She described the events of December 23rd in detail, how Marcia had been drinking, how she'd exploded at Emma's back talk, how she called the family together to teach the child a lesson. Did anyone try to stop her? Norton asked. No, Renee said quietly. We were all too scared of Marcia. She has a temper, and she controls our money. If you cross her, she trailed off. What about Brittany? Did she try to stop her mother? No. Brittany was laughing. She was filming it and laughing. Renee's voice broke. I know that makes me sound like I'm trying to shift blame, but it's true. Brittany thought it was funny. The defense tried to discredit Renee during cross-examination, pointing out her plea deal and reduced sentence. But her testimony was too consistent, too detailed. The jury believed her. Over the next week, the state presented the rest of its case. Financial records showing Marcia's control over the family. Text messages between the defendants discussing Emma's behavior problems, messages that read more like conspiracy than concern. Expert testimony about child abuse and torture. The defense's case was weak. They put up character witnesses for each defendant, but Norton shredded them on cross-examination. They tried to present evidence of Emma's supposed misbehavior, but had nothing concrete, just vague statements from the defendants themselves. Brittany took the stand in her own defense, a risky move. She claimed she'd been coerced by her mother, that she'd filmed the abuse to document it for police later, that she'd never actually wanted to hurt Emma. Norton destroyed her on cross-examination. You were laughing in the video, weren't you, Miss Kern? I was. That was nervous laughter. I was scared. Scared of what? Your 5-year-old daughter? No. Of my mother. Your mother who you called 12 times that day, asking when she'd be home? Your mother who you texted. Can't wait to see you teach that brat a lesson. Norton held up phone records. That doesn't sound like someone acting under duress. Brittany had no answer. She left the stand in tears, but the damage was done. Closing arguments came on day 9 of the trial. Norton was brilliant, weaving together the evidence into an undeniable narrative of systematic abuse. The defense attorneys tried their best, but they had nothing to work with. Judge Graves charged the jury on day 10. They deliberated for 6 hours. The verdict came back on March 31st. Guilty. On all counts. All 9 defendants. The courtroom erupted. Several jurors were crying. Marcia Cole showed no reaction. Brittany collapsed sobbing. The others looked shell-shocked. Judge Graves gavelled for order. The defendants will be remanded to custody pending sentencing. Sentencing hearing is set for April 15th. Court is adjourned. Vincent sat in the gallery as the defendants were led away in shackles. He felt no triumph, no joy, just exhaustion and relief. It was over. Emma would never have to fear these people again. Outside the courthouse, media swarmed. Vincent made a brief statement, thanking the jury and the prosecution, dedicating the victory to Emma. Then he went home to his daughter. Emma was waiting with Daryl and Melinda, coloring at the kitchen table. She looked up when Vincent walked in. Did they go to jail? Yes, sweetheart. They're going to jail for a very long time. Emma nodded solemnly. Good. Can we have ice cream? Vincent laughed, the tension finally breaking. Yeah, we can have ice cream. Sentencing came on April 15th. Judge Graves was thorough and merciless. I have presided over thousands of cases in my career, he began. Murders, rapes, horrific crimes of violence. But I have never seen anything as depraved as what occurred on December 23rd. The systematic torture of a child by 9 adults, family members who were supposed to protect her, is beyond comprehension. He sentenced Marcia Cole to the maximum, 20 years with no possibility of parole. Brittany received 18 years. Todd Harden got 15. The others received between 10 and 15 years each. These sentences are not just punishment, Graves concluded. They are a statement that our society will not tolerate child abuse, that families who prey on the most vulnerable will face the harshest consequences the law allows. Renee Knox, who had already pleaded guilty, was formally sentenced to 10 years with parole eligibility after 5. It still felt light to Vincent, but he accepted it as the price of her cooperation. After the sentencing, D.A. Norton shook Vincent's hand. It's done. Justice has been served. Thank you, Vincent said sincerely. For everything. You made it easy. The evidence was overwhelming, and Norton paused. Between you and me, the Cole family's financial collapse helped. Without Winston Marsh, they never had a chance. Sometimes, justice needs a little push. Vincent said nothing, but he understood. Norton suspected Vincent had played a role in the family's financial ruin, but couldn't prove it and didn't want to. As far as Norton was concerned, the ends justified the means. Vincent could live with that. He returned to his house, where Emma, Daryl, and Melinda were preparing for a celebration dinner. Emma had been making a cake, or trying to, with Melinda's help. The kitchen was a disaster of flour and frosting. Daddy! Emma ran to him, and he scooped her up. Did the bad people get in trouble? They did, sweetheart. Big trouble. They won't ever hurt you again. Promise? I promise. That evening, as they ate dinner together, the four of them, a new family unit forming, Vincent felt something he hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not complete. Not perfect. Emma still had nightmares, still struggled with certain sounds and words. The scars, physical and psychological, would never fully heal. But they'd survived. They'd fought back. And they'd won. The next day, Vincent officially returned to active duty, but with a special assignment. Lieutenant Colonel Sweeney had arranged for him to be stationed at Fort Gordon in Augusta, where he'd train new recruits while staying close to Emma. His deployments would be minimal, his duties focused on education and mentorship rather than combat. Your experience is valuable, Sweeney told him, but your daughter needs you more. This assignment lets you serve while being a father. Make it work. Vincent intended to. Daryl and Melinda legally adopted Emma. Vincent remained her father in every way that mattered, but the formal adoption gave them authority to care for her when Vincent was on duty. They bought a house 2 blocks from Vincent's, creating a support system for Emma. Life slowly normalized. Emma started kindergarten, though with an IEP to accommodate her speech impediment. She made friends, learned to read, slowly regained her confidence. Therapy continued, and would for years, but progress was steady. Vincent's own healing took longer. He had nightmares too. Dreams of arriving 30 seconds later, of not being able to stop Marcia, of losing Emma. He attended his own therapy, working through the guilt and rage and fear that had driven him to such extreme measures. You did what you had to do, his therapist told him. Not all of it was legal, and not all of it was right. But you protected your daughter. Sometimes, that's enough. Vincent wanted to believe that. Most days, he did. On December 23rd, 1 year after the abuse, Vincent took Emma to the cemetery where they'd buried the past. Not literally, but symbolically. They planted a tree in their backyard. An oak that would grow strong and tall, just like Emma. This is our fresh start, Vincent told her. Everything that happened is in the past. We're growing now, getting stronger. Emma, now 6 and much more verbal, looked up at him seriously. I'm not scared anymore, Daddy. No? No. Because you'll always protect me. Right? Always, Vincent promised. No matter what. They watered the tree together. And Vincent reflected on the year behind them. The horror of discovering the abuse. The rage and helplessness. The decision to fight back not just through the legal system, but through every means available. The risk, the danger, the possibility of losing everything. And the victory. Not perfect, not complete, but real. 9 people were in prison, unable to hurt anyone else. Emma was safe, healing, building a new life. Justice had been served, both legally and personally. Vincent Kern had gone to war against his own family and won. Not through violence, not through rage, but through intelligence and strategy and unwavering determination to protect his daughter. He'd crossed lines, broken laws, done things he couldn't fully justify by conventional morality. But looking at Emma now, smiling and healthy and safe, Vincent couldn't bring himself to regret any of it. Some battles had to be fought, some enemies had to be defeated, and some victories, however imperfect, were worth whatever they cost. Vincent had paid that cost, and he'd do it again in a heartbeat. Because Emma was worth it. Every risk, every sacrifice, every line crossed. She was worth everything. And as they walked back into the house, hand in hand, father and daughter, survivors and victors, Vincent Kern finally allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they'd found their happy ending, or at least the beginning of one. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.